So the assessment practices in Finland, well, from the principle that every student has the right to show their learning and skills in different ways. And this is something that I really like because there's not one way of addressing or for every child to show what they have learned or what they know. We know that they have different strengths, and therefore the assessment needs to be done through different approaches throughout the year. So there's of course like some tests, but they're not the only way of assessing. The assessing is like throughout the year. So we have guiding feedback, self-assessment, different and versatile assessment practices. And in some transition points, there will be some sort of exam. So for example, from 6th to 7th grade, so when starting secondary school, there's a larger assessment, but it's not really a test. Or from 2nd grade towards 3rd grade of primary school, there's another kind of larger assessment. It's not a test, but we teachers discuss with the student and the parents in a kind of like a more specific and specialized way about the different ways in which the child has learned. Some principles about the assessment is that the student needs to understand what is being assessed. And I think that this is very important, because it's addressing children's rights, because it's a right for the child to be involved in all of the decisions that are focused on them. And guardians should be informed throughout the year as well. So they also need to be aware of what is being assessed. And the assessment might be daily teacher feedback, so talking with them. It can be written assessment, quizzes, tests, presentations, peer assessment, self-assessments. There's many ways. For me, assessment became something that I started to focus on more and more when I found out that there's many ways in which we can assess. Even at the beginning of every lesson, I try to talk about what are the 2 goals, or what's the 1 goal or the 3 goals of the lesson. And after the lesson, the minimum that I would do was, okay, show me with your thumb. How do you feel? Were you able to get to the goal number 1 or goal this? I would say one of the goals, and they would show me thumbs up, or so that would be for me a minimum to kind of be aware of how they're feeling, and for them as well to be able to practice what is to assess yourself. In evaluation, in Finland, the numerical assessment, so when we evaluate, for example, with tests, numerical evaluation starts in 4th grade. And before that, we have a different system. We cannot pass or fail, but it's not that common. We might use a abbreviated version of very well, good, quite well, partially. So all of these are that they passed or then not passed. And then the numerical scale is from 4 to 10. 4 is fail and 5 and above are pass. But yeah, so assessment is not only that pass or fail or test. The assessment is also feedback. And the whole point of assessment is to motivate and encourage the student to know what they're learning, to own their own learning, and to have this kind of positive reinforcement. And to do that, we communicate what students are expected to learn. And this is also written in the national core curricula. So we communicate what is expected to learn, what they have already learned. So we help them realize, have you realized that you have learned this and that and this, and how could they develop their learning? So it's also this kind of not you have not learned this, but in order to learn this, you could try these or that. So this should be communicated throughout the year with the student in different ways, and at least once a year in a meeting with the guardians. So we have around between December, January, February, a meeting where it's the teacher, the guardians, and the student, and together we talk about the assessment in different subjects. Something that I tried to develop during my lessons was communicating the expected goals, because this improves the assessment, and not only for the teacher, for you as a teacher, it's easier then to realize the assessment, but it's also helpful for the student to know what is being assessed. So for example, in music lessons, at the start of the lesson, I would put up visually, and this is another aspect that I try to always add. In addition to what I've been saying, I try to have always something visual, because there's many kids who learn visually, and I'm a person as well who remembers things if they've seen it or read it. So I would write on the screen, like, the goals of this lesson are: 1, to learn to play the chords C and D in the ukulele, and 2, to support to have a peaceful learning atmosphere for all. And maybe if you have taught music lessons, you might understand why this was a goal of the lesson. And I try to encourage this a lot during our noisy lessons. And at the end of the lesson, we would revise, like, okay, so how do you feel about these goals? Were you able to address goal number 1? So do you feel that you learned the chord C? Yes. So note. Or the chord D, and were you able to support a peaceful learning atmosphere? Yeah, and I would try to then communicate this with the parents as well. We teachers are very busy all the time, and you cannot be in 5 different sites at the same time, talking to the students, writing a message to the parents. But whenever I had some time to write, we have this system, like, it's like an email, but it's not really email, a system that the parents can see online, and where you have access to every student, and you can mark like some quick note to the student, and the parent can see the message or the note.